Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Civalgo podcast. My name is Alex. I'm the host for today's session. The Civalgo podcast is the podcast that gives back to the construction industry. We give back insights, best practices, and general knowledge on how to improve the construction industry. So today I'm very happy to have with us our guest, Mike Elmendorf, the CEO of AGC New York State, and we're going to talk about the AGC's mission and how they're giving back to the construction industry. I'm very curious. Mike, please start and present yourself, and let's dive right in.
Great. Well, thanks, Alex. Great to be here with you. Looking forward to it. I have to admit, though, I told my 12-year-old son I was going to record a podcast, and he was very excited until he found out it was not Crime Junkie or whatever that is. But nonetheless, this is going to be great and a great discussion. So, as you mentioned, I'm the president and CEO of AGC New York State. We're the statewide construction industry organization in New York, New York's leading construction industry association. We represent essentially the whole non-residential construction industry in New York State. So when people ask me, what do your members do? I tell them, well, basically, wherever you're going, unless it's someone's house, and however you're getting there, likely it was built by an AGC member.
Absolutely. So there's a lot going on with AGC. I joined you guys just a few months ago, and it's very exciting to see how you guys are moving the needle within the District of Transportation, for example. Can you talk to us a little bit about the mission of AGC, and maybe just start by, talking about your background before we dive into it?
Sure. I don't actually come from the construction industry. People make the mistake of assuming that I know something about construction. I know a lot more about it than I did almost 15 years ago when I started, but I came from the government side of things. I worked for Governor George Pataki all 3 terms that he was the governor of New York, was a member of his senior staff. And then when he retired after 12 years as New York's governor, I became the New York State director of the National Federation of Independent Business, the NFIB, which is the largest business organization in New York, had about 10,000 members across New York State doing basically everything you could think of, and probably a few things you would rather not think of, but every type of small business that you can imagine. And I joined AGC, it'll be 15 years ago in February.
Amazing.
We do, time flies when you're having fun, and we certainly have fun, although there is no shortage of problems for the construction industry in New York. New York is probably certainly the most expensive place in America to build anything, but in many ways, probably the most challenging place in America to build anything, which is really where the value of AGC New York State comes in.
So we're going to get deep dive into the challenges a bit later, but how about we talk about the services provided by AGC to the members?
Yep, absolutely. We do a lot, and there are some things about our chapter that are unique compared to the other 87 or 6 chapters. There's mergers happening all the time between chapters, so I think we're currently at 87 nationwide. We aim to be the go-to resource for New York's leading contractors. So obviously advocacy is a big part of what we do. We work with state government. We work with the city government in New York City. We work with some of the local governments around the state when there's significant enough issues. We work with the federal government to advocate for policies that are good for construction, good for construction employers, good for infrastructure investment, generally good for the business environment, because obviously when the economy and the business environment are doing better, the construction industry is doing better. When those things are dragging, the construction industry is on average doing worse than a lot of other sectors are. We provide a lot of education and training in different types of things, from our sort of standing curriculum like our Construction Leadership Academy, which is the premier program in New York that trains the next generation of leaders in the leading construction firms across the state, to specific issue programs that we do when there's a new law, a new regulation, a new rule that's driving people crazy, and there is no shortage of those. There's always something coming around the pike for construction employers in New York. We also do something that's a little bit different in New York. We have real subject matter experts on staff. You've met some of them. Joe Hogan, our vice president on the vertical building side, has been with us now nearly 40 years, if you can believe that. Tom Weiser, who's vice president of transportation, is a 30-year veteran of New York State DOT, was the head of construction at DOT at one point. Our safety folks, Dennis Kiefer and Jim Redmond, who you've met, they have decades of experience with AGC out in the field, working with contractors, walking job sites, identifying problems, helping with OSHA issues, training their staff. And our whole team has decades of experience in the construction industry. So we always say if our members are using their membership in AGC to its fullest value, our team really becomes an extension of their own. And we have contractors that call us weekly, if not more frequently, about issues that are going on in their company or with their projects, and we're able to answer those calls very effectively.
It's really amazing because I did meet all of those people from your team, and it's astonishing how much they're driven by efficiency. They're also driving efficiency for the contractors, right? They're the go-to resource. So I really got attached to that value of efficiency at AGC. Moving forward, can you talk a little bit about the mission of getting the money into the contractor's pocket? Budgets is one thing. The state needs to, spend the money on the work they promise to get it to the contractor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we spend a lot of time on, and it's a big part of our advocacy agenda, Walter Pacholzak, who's our Vice President of Government Affairs, is a veteran of the state legislature, and actually he's from New York City. Well, he's from Staten Island, which most people think is part of New York City. Depending on what borough you're from, there may be an argument about whether that's really New York City, but it's technically New York City. So he's got a great statewide perspective, and advocating for increased investment in infrastructure, whether it's roads and bridges, whether it's investment in the state university system, the SUNY construction funds, capital program, environmental infrastructure, things like that on the public side is a big part of what we do. Actually, tomorrow, I'll be joining with Governor Kathy Hochul in a press conference with labor and business leaders to talk about the $800 million of additional investment that was put in place for core New York State DOT capital needs last year in the budget. That's a proposal that AGC initiated, galvanized support across the business community with our partners in labor, with other sectors in the economy that obviously rely on infrastructure. Like you think about road and bridge investment. Of course, we care about that, right? Because that's one of the main things our members build. But you don't think about maybe the fact that the hospitality and tourism industry cares about it, because it's critically important to bringing people into their communities, making it seem like it's a place that they want to be. When you bring your family on vacation and you roll into some town and it looks like the street's been bombed, probably not the greatest welcome you're going to get, right? So infrastructure is important to many different aspects of the economy. So tomorrow we'll be with the governor talking about the impact of that investment. And then there's the private sector. Obviously, we are busy advocating for policies that make New York a better place for the private sector to invest and develop things in the private economy through private construction that are going to create opportunities for our members, both directly. And then obviously, when you've got a thriving economy, there's lots of other things that pop up around it that create opportunities for construction. So it's really 360 degrees of investing in construction that we're out there fighting for. It
was really the most valuable argument that got me impressed about what you guys are doing and moving the needle for your contractors. Without you guys, the support, the construction industry can suffer. We're going up and down in market, labor shortages. That's a whole other podcast. But I really want to bring this to the long-term vision.
Sure.
What's the long-term vision of AGC within budgets, but also regulations?
Well, when it comes to regulations, one of our main issues is to make sure that our members are not surprised, right? I don't know how you could possibly successfully run a construction business, or any business for that matter, if you were also trying to keep track of the never-ending barrage of new rules, new regulations, new things that you need to do. And if you don't, you could find yourself in trouble. That's where AGC comes in. We're on top of that. We're tracking every bill in the legislature that impacts the construction industry. We're tracking every proposed regulation that impacts the construction industry. When there are things that are unhelpful, we are out there advocating to have them not happen or to make them better. It's New York. New York's a tough place for the business community. It's a tough place for the construction industry. So we spend a lot of time mitigating bad ideas, I joke about, you probably heard me do this when you were with us up the Sagamore. We spend a lot of time working very hard to turn terrible ideas into bad ideas, right? Sometimes that's what passes for a win in New York, but that's kind of what we're doing day in and day out, trying to make it better for the construction industry, and then making sure that our members know what the current state of play is, what they're expected to do, so that they follow the rules, they don't get penalized, they don't get fined, or have something else happen, because, it can be pretty dangerous if you don't know that something has changed and there's a new requirement in place that you do or don't do something. Oftentimes we get a call from somebody who's not an AGC member who says, well, I didn't know about this. I'm like, well, had you been an AGC member, you would have known about it.
You got to join, right?
Yeah.
So the specific realities of the construction landscape in New York State, we said it was a very complex landscape, a lot of rules and regulations, labor is critical. Can we expand on the different items that are proper and just for the New York State?
Yeah, well, where to begin? How much time do we have, right? New York is a complicated place. It's New York State, right? It's really, I would argue, 2 or 3 or maybe 4 different states in one, right? You've got New York City, which is obviously an entity unto itself. It's a very unique place. It's a great place. There's a lot going on, but you can imagine how hard it is to build in New York City, particularly in Manhattan, given the density, given the elevation, given how hard it is to get from point A to point B. A very challenging environment down there. We have made great strides in recent years working with the New York City Department of Buildings to make that environment better. Previously, one of the things that we heard from our members was they know what the rules are, but sometimes the Department of Buildings would show up and their perspective was, well, we don't like how that looks. Well, that's nice or not, but that's not a standard that somebody either adheres to or not, right?
What are the rules, right?
So the mayor of New York City, soon to be the former mayor of New York City, responded to what we, brought to him and put together a commission that Joe Hogan and Dennis Kiefer from our team served on, that worked with the New York City Department of Buildings to really clean that up and made their process much more predictable for contractors. There are rigorous standards and rules in terms of how you build, whether it's safety, whether it's noise and other things like that. Our guys know it. They follow it, they adhere to it, and the phone has stopped ringing about those issues in New York City with the DOB just randomly shutting down jobs for things that are not a clear violation of the standard that's in place. That's just one of the many issues that we deal with. I joke there is no shortage of issues. We're not going out of business anytime soon because there is lots and lots of stuff to work on for our members in the construction industry.
So that's one of the many initiatives that you guys pushed in Manhattan, for example. Is there something else that you're particularly proud of your team that they were able to push through?
Well, I talked about the $800 million ad for New York State DOT capital. You would think that road and bridge builders would be riding high in New York and America right now because you had the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was enacted now, I think going on, 4 years or so ago. It was the biggest federal investment in road and bridge infrastructure since President Eisenhower built the interstate system, and that was a long time ago. And then you had the governor follow with the enactment of the biggest 5-year capital plan in New York State history. So great story, right? Well, not so much, because at the same time, there were a couple of things happening. Record inflation, material cost escalation for the construction industry, and now we're dealing with tariffs, which are driving up the cost of a sore subject for our friends up north in Canada, right? But we're dealing with tariffs that are driving up the cost of all manners of construction materials. So the reality is that the increase that the federal infrastructure bill and the new state DOT capital plan should have brought to investing in road and bridge infrastructure and improving road and bridge conditions in New York, which are some of the worst in the country, was more than eaten away by the impact of material cost escalation, inflation, and now tariffs. So we're in a hole. So as great as it is that we've got an $800 million ad in the budget this year, that ad is designed to fill that hole, because otherwise you'd have projects that were part of the 5-year capital plan falling off the table. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about tomorrow with the governor and others. And obviously going forward in the budget process this year, we're going to be talking about the need to make additional investment to make whole the capital program, because the impact of inflation and all the other things that are eroding the spending power of the capital program are still there.
Yeah, to cover the impact of the tariffs, absolutely. Without getting into that other podcast once again.
I can talk about tariffs. I've spent more time talking about tariffs than I thought I ever would. I did not have that on my bingo card as a kid, that I would be talking about tariffs, but there's a lot of things I didn't have on my bingo card. Here we are. So
I get it absolutely right. So unpredictable, but I want to talk about, before we talked about like contractors that are not members, right? And they call in because they know you're the go-to people when it comes to issues in the construction industry. What would be the top 3 things that you would say to contractors so that they understand what joining AGC New York State actually means?
Yeah. Well, like I said, not every other chapter has the sort of subject matter experts that we have in Joe and Tom and Dennis and Walter and Jim and Brendan and Kathy and the rest of our team, that are really long tenured team. Carla Plankenhorn, who you've dealt with. These are folks that literally have decades of experience, and not only the knowledge that comes with that, but the commitment that comes to the industry and our members. So when you join, you're adding that team of experts to your team, right? You're getting the insight as to what is happening as it's happening, not reading about it in the paper. And you're dealing with the team that is, in most instances, shaping what happens on issues that impact the construction industry. Probably the most tangible example of that in my time since I've been here was during COVID. All right, COVID was an extraordinarily challenging time. It was a scary time. Nobody knew what was coming next. New York was the epicenter of the pandemic. It really started here in the United States. We shut down earlier than lots of other states. And what we were able to do was working with the federal government, working with the state government. We got construction back online. We got construction deemed essential in New York. AGC of America was instrumental in doing that nationally. We kept contractors working. We kept supply chains open. We kept the economy going, and we were able to do it safely. And we worked with the administration in Albany determining what types of construction could or couldn't continue, what projects were permitted, what projects weren't, what were the conditions and the protocols that you had to follow with people coming back to work.
Massive.
And we shaped all that. And it was a very scary time for everybody. And one of the things that we did was, well, two things. We started having a Monday morning Zoom meeting. Here's the latest. Here's what's going on. Because things were changing, not even by the hour, by the minute. It was actually sort of maddening, right? And so we started having these Zoom meetings, and eventually we'd have 100 plus of our members on these Monday morning Zoom meetings. And we did this every week. And it was sort of like, here's the latest. Here's what we know. But it was also nice just to see each other. Because as you know, having been to some of our events, this is a group of people that really enjoys each other's company, right? Our meetings are sort of like a family reunion. And here we all were locked away, in our houses. We weren't doing the things that we normally did. I wasn't traveling around the state. We canceled our standing events because we had to. And two things happened. First, when COVID kind of abated and we stopped doing those meetings, for probably a month or so afterwards, there was nothing on the calendar. I would start getting emails, so-and-so has joined your Zoom meeting, because it just became part of what people did. Even though it wasn't on their calendar, they were like, Monday, 10 o'clock, we got to go to the Zoom meeting to see what's happening. The other thing that we did was we opened up our resources and information to non-AGC members, contractors in the construction industry that hadn't seen fit to join AGC before, because it just seemed like the right thing to do. I mean, you're not only talking about people not getting in trouble because they violated whatever the rule is, and good luck keeping track of it. I mean, on a good day now, it's hard to do. Back then, it was nearly an impossibility. It was also about people's health and safety, right? Understanding here is what you need to do. Here's what the health experts are saying as a construction employer you need to do to keep your employees and keep people around your job site safe from the pandemic. And most of those firms joined, like nearly all of them joined. It was our biggest year of member growth to date. We might beat it this year. But then that was sort of counterintuitive, right? Because the economy was cratering, people were panicking, and you would think, employers of any stripe, not knowing what's next for them, they may say, I don't know if I want to invest in something like that. They came to us in droves because we were able to demonstrate to them in real time with real high stakes what we do and the value of membership in AGC, and pretty proud of the work the team did then.
I love to hear give first, receive later. And the fact that you opened up everything for non-members, I mean, that's huge. You don't see that every day. And it's very clear for me now that the value of joining AGC is tremendous, right? You get the experts, you get the team, you get the department that moves the needle on everything construction in New York State, the most complicated place to build in America, right? So I want to move along now through your leadership, actually, and leading through change, right? So you said before, almost 15 years as a CEO of AGC. So I want to talk a little bit about the lessons that you learned, because construction 15 years ago is not the same as today.
Oh, sure.
So any thoughts to kind of share on that?
Yeah, well, when I joined the association, it was an interesting time because it was fresh off a merger. I mentioned the number of AGC chapters nationwide changes because there's a trend between vertical building and heavy highway civil chapters getting married, merging. And that happened in New York a couple of years before I started. So that was still relatively fresh in the beginning. And there was a lot of sort of the growing pains and it sort of reminds me of the Brady Bunch, right? If you remember that show. Was that big in Canada? It wasn't big in Canada? Well, maybe you're better for it. But, like you think about like two families that come together, right? And suddenly, the father and the mother, they get married, from other marriages, they got all these kids living together. A little bit complicated in the beginning. And that was certainly the case when the building contractors and the highway contractors got together. And that was one of the first things that I had to deal with as the first unified leader, because initially they had the gentleman who ran the vertical building side, gentleman who ran the highway side. they both left, and I was the first head of the whole thing. And so there were some growing pains at first, and some people who were not really sure whether, we should all be living under the same roof, but that's all behind us. It's a unified industry now, and that merger has really made us stronger. I mean, you talk about what's changed in the construction industry since then, where to begin? You go to a job site now, everyone's walking around with a tablet. Technology is everywhere. I mean, I remember going to a AGC of America meeting, and they had a session on the cloud and putting your information in the cloud. And I sat with one of our members, past chairman of the association, is a building contractor from Brooklyn, and he was like, "Well, what is the cloud? Where is the cloud?"
How long ago was that?
This was probably 12 years ago. Maybe he was behind. I don't know. But, he was like, if I send my things there, can I go see them? Like, why would I want to put my things in the cloud? What is this? Now we're having those conversations, and you heard some of it at our summer meeting about AI and the role that AI has, for better, for potentially worse, some of the pitfalls. Technology is really one of the big things that has changed in the construction industry, and how it's changed how we build, how we bid, how we track work in the construction industry. Some have been faster to adopt that than others. But for the folks that believe that, this is a dirt and shovels industry, that's part of it. But technology is a huge part of how things get built and how projects get successfully delivered. And it's become, each year, I think it's become a bigger part of that. Workforce is a challenge. We have an aging workforce in the construction industry nationwide, but certainly in New York. There's a lot of good things happening in the construction industry in New York. There's some very significant projects across the state happening. One of the challenges always is, who's going to build it? We need to do a better job getting people, young people, new people into the industry. That's been a challenge. It's a challenge here. It's a challenge around the country, but that's something we spend a lot of time thinking about. Really, the industry changes almost every day. I mean, you deal with it, Alex. You see it. I mean, it is an ever-changing industry.
Do you think the fact of pushing technology is a way to attract new people within this aging?
Yeah, I think it is. Because, when a lot of people who don't understand the construction industry think about it, they think, I don't want to go dig holes. Even if you get to do it in a big piece of heavy equipment, which I think is really pretty cool.
Pretty cool, yeah.
Pretty cool. They haven't let me do it yet, but probably for the best. That's why everyone is still here and safe. I think Jim and Dennis would have a cow if they saw me climbing into one of those things. But their technology is everywhere, right? And I think that's part of attracting young people to this industry, because it is an industry where you can make a great living, right? A really good income without necessarily having had to go to a 2 or 4 year college program, without carrying all that debt. Certainly there are other jobs in the industry where you need to do that, in some of the supervisory management, more technical positions in the industry. But as a skilled tradesperson, you can make a great living without having saddled yourself with all that debt and relatively quickly getting into the workforce. But people need to understand what is involved with that. And I think the embrace of technology in the construction industry and its prevalence on job sites is a way to get those younger people interested in it, because if they're anything like my kids, if there's a screen and a keyboard involved, you've got their attention. Absolutely,
because everything in the construction industry is changing so fast. I was reading this morning, actually, that roughly $30 billion of construction happens in New York State. You can actually confirm or deny that number. You know the exact figure, but a lot of this construction happens, and companies are actually, for the most part, surprisingly enough, still on Excel and paper. I mean, we were within clients today in the surrounding areas, and a lot of people are still on Excel and paper. So what do you think AGC's role in pushing technology and educating, as you've been doing so well on other fronts?
Yeah.
What's the AGC's role here?
I think part of it is, look, for some folks that works, right? You know what they say, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? We have, and our members run the full range of big multinational companies to small, family-owned firms who probably are the ones that are more likely still using Excel and paper, right? If that works for them, great. But part of what we do is make sure that our members know the tools and the resources that are out there in terms of the technology that is becoming more and more prevalent in the construction industry. Our biggest event of the year is our Construction Industry Conference, which takes place up in Saratoga Springs in December. We get about 1,200 people from around the state there. There's a lot of technology being showcased at that event because that's really the boots on the ground people, the folks that are really running projects and getting the work done for our members. A lot of our events are more the executive and leadership. They're there too, but this is an event that's really for the tradespeople, the people that and the project managers, the superintendents, the people that are out there making these projects happen. And so there, if you walk around the trade show floor there, you'll see lots of different technology solutions there that are being highlighted for the industry. So, we're not making anybody do anything. That's not our role. We're making sure that contractors know where there's a better or more efficient way to do something because of the march of technology, that they have access to it.
I see once again here, AGC New York State driving efficiency for members. And I want to get back to those members for 2 minutes, because we talked about how the landscape has evolved within your tenure as CEO at AGC. But do you think the needs of the contractors also evolved? Can you talk about that as well?
Yeah, I think they have. I think that the regulatory onslaught has gotten more fierce in New York, and it ebbs and flows at the federal level. But certainly there's lots of change happening at the federal level. Right now, we're dealing with an issue with a massive change that the administration in Washington has made to the United States Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. It's basically thrown out the entire existing program, and there are all sorts of questions about what that means to projects that are currently underway, projects that have been bid but not yet awarded. This was a fire drill all day today, all last week. So the needs change based on kind of what's going on, right? I mean, we talked about during COVID, 3 months earlier, I don't think any of us would have said, well, here's what contractors are going to need. They're going to need our help navigating all of this.
Here's my crystal ball, right? And they're going to need this,
if it said
right?
that, I would have chucked it out the window because I wouldn't have wanted to hear it, right? But, so one of the things that we do is certainly we're looking down the road. We're trying to help our members see around the corner so that they know what's coming and they're prepared, whether it's new rules, new regulations, new laws, new policies, new trends in the construction industry. AGC of America, and you may have gotten to hear him up at Lake George. Ken Simonson's our chief economist. He is outstanding and helps contractors talk about the crystal ball, have a sense of what's happening in different sectors and markets, where perhaps they should focus, what they should prepare for, the types of investments they should be making in their company to make sure that they're positioned to capitalize on the markets that are going to be hot, not end up getting stuck in the markets that may be receding, because that's happening all the time in the construction economy. So part of what we have to do is be nimble, right? We need to try to see ahead, but also be ready for what's coming and make sure we're on top of it so that we can be that resource that our contractors need when they pick up the phone and call us, or when we, light up the lines and say, hey, you need to know about this. This is happening.
So AGC is the eyes and ears for contractors. And coming back on that presentation of your chief economist at AGC of America, I was astonished, right? One of the biggest takeaways from that presentation was that the construction industry since 1970 has actually reduced its productivity. It's the only sector.
Yeah.
You compare it to global economy, we lost productivity, right? And that's because of rules and regulations, not because our equipment is worse, not because we're not as good as building, we're better, right? So that really blew my mind. And really that was a high value for me being at the Sagamore with you guys this summer. So right now I wanted to go into another segment, and I wanted to know, Mike, what is the thing you're the most proud of you and your team right now, of AGC?
Oh, there's a lot there. Well, we've been growing now for, I think this year will be 13 years in a row. That's something else. And more than that, you don't grow if you don't keep the customers that you have, right? Our general contractor retention rate is 99.something%. And if people would stop either selling to somebody else, because there's a lot of consolidation happening all the time in the construction industry, or just deciding that they're going to retire and nobody else wants to do this anymore, maybe we'd hit 100. So to me, that says the people are seeing the value of what we are doing. It's not me, it's the team. We have a great team of people who really know their stuff. And when we talk to prospective members, most of the time they join because when they hear, when we get the right people from the staff lined up that are dealing with the types of things that company is going to be interested in, they join, they see the value, and anybody can do a good enough job in a short pitch to get somebody to sign up for a year or two, but then suddenly they disappear. We keep those folks once they sign up. So I think we do a very good job of what we do. The presumptions when I came in was declining membership in New York. And we've turned that around, and we've turned it around in a very significant way. And again, I think this year we are on track to actually grow. I shouldn't say this out loud because the books aren't closed yet.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah. So we might have to edit this out later if it doesn't work out, but I think we are actually going to end up surpassing the high level mark for growth that we set during COVID, which that in and of itself was something really to be proud of, because the way the team responded during COVID, we were working around the clock. Stuff was happening at all hours of the day. We were dealing with calls from the governor's office, from local governments, from agencies, working to try to keep supply chains open as facilities were potentially closing down as things were happening with COVID. It was a pretty wild time. It sort of brought me back to my days in the governor's office where I worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 3 terms of George Pataki being the governor. It's why I'm an old guy with young kids, because nobody would put up with me back then. But it reinvigorated me, dealing with that volume of stuff that really was for our members life or death. And the team did a great job.
So the team here is absolutely astonishing, and I've met a bunch of them, and I really connected with their values. Is there something else you'd like to share that really motivates you to keep on going after 15 years? Perhaps talk about the culture that you've built at AGC New York State.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, our members are great people. They really are. They're risk takers. They're entrepreneurs. They're successful, but one bad job can turn that into a real problem for a contractor, right? I don't think most people understand the magnitude of the risk that a contractor takes when they bid a job and undertake a construction project. They're great salt of the earth people, and they've become some of my best friends. They truly are wonderful folks, and so it's that motivates you to want to work hard for them. And I think this certainly is the way the team feels. And having spent some time with members and with the team, you can see that. So there is that. It's also the fact that clearly we're making a difference for our members, right?
Absolutely.
That's something that has always motivated me. I'm not looking just for somewhere to go during the day to get out of the house so my wife doesn't get sick of me. I'm looking to go do something that matters and makes a difference and is having an impact. And I think we do that every day. I think our team does that every day. And again, if you look at the results with how our members feel about us and how we're positioned, in the industry, clearly we're doing that. And that's really what keeps me going. If there comes a time when I think I'm not useful, I'll either, go home and start watching The Price is Right or go find something else to do. But I think that's a long way off.
Yeah, the purpose is definitely clear. You're changing the industry day after day. And that's really what, I got attached to when I met you guys. And I did see a tightly knit community. Everyone knows each other and they're willing to help each other out. It's not what you think about when you talk about the construction industry at first glance, right?
Yeah, they might not always love each other on bid day, right? When, this guy's a low bidder and this guy was right behind. I mean, we had one instance where 2 members who are very, very involved with AGC, it was a DOT project. I was flying to an AGC of America meeting somewhere. I don't even know where I am half the time because I'm bouncing around all the time. And they bid the exact same amount. It was a tie, right? And
what happened then?
Well, it's a good question. I'd never seen it. I said, now what? And so this was before Tom Weiser was with us. Karen Morrison was the vice president of transportation. I said, what do they do now? She says, believe it or not, can you guess what they do, how they resolve that? They flip a coin. And so they're opening the bids at DOT headquarters here in Albany. And they said, is there anyone here from the 2 companies? And people still go to the lettings. We brought, we pushed the results out to our members, but people still go over there and watch them open up the bids. And this happened to be 2 firms that were in the Albany area. So somebody actually went. And so they said, well, we have a tie. We have to flip a coin. And so they asked the one guy, heads or tails, and he picked tails. It came up heads. And so the other firm got the bid, and they still tease each other about that.
For sure.
But if they needed help, if they needed to be a resource to each other, these folks, they all like each other. They all know they're in the same industry. They support each other. And that's part of the value that we bring as well, is the relationships that develop between our members. I mean, you look at one of the biggest construction projects, not just in New York, but in America right now, is the I-81 corridor through Syracuse in central New York, where they're removing and reimagining an elevated highway that divided the city of Syracuse for decades. And it's a multi-billion-dollar project. It's a very complicated project. And right now, there's two different teams that it's been divided up into multiple contracts. I think they're getting ready to go out with the contract 6 and then 7 behind it. And the joint ventures, the teams that came together to deliver that project, are AGC members who met through AGC, who got to know each other through AGC, got to know each other's capabilities and culture through AGC. And you've got firms literally that span the state that are together delivering that project successfully. It's a pretty cool thing to drive through that project and see trucks from this company and that company and that company and that company and that company, all AGC members working hand in hand to get that tough job done.
Done by you and your team, right? This is now possible because of the collaboration and the values that you've spread through the industry. And that's really...
And the connections that members make with each other by being a member and participating.
Absolutely. So right now we were in a section of the podcast where I wanted to talk about your leadership. So would you have any advice for contractors out there, either established companies or maybe a 50, 60 employee company wanting to go to the next level? Can you share a little bit about some advice or best practices for them?
In a sense, yes. In a sense, no. I mean, certainly what I do is different than running a construction company. I wouldn't presume that I understand what our members do and deal with day in and day out. But the successful companies and the companies that grow are the companies that are engaged outside themselves, right? AGC, sure, you should be involved with AGC, but folks that are involved in their community, they're involved in other entities. They have a sense of what's going on in the community and the market around them, however big that may be. We have some contractors that work regionally. They work around an urban center. We have others that work really across the whole state. We have others that work across the country and beyond, right? And so I think, being engaged with things, being engaged certainly in your industry, but beyond, positions you to be viewed as a leader, not just in your industry, but in the community, in the business community, and it opens the doors to opportunities. We have members that, chair the board of the local hospital or are involved with their local government or lead their chamber of commerce, or some of them are doing all these things at once. Those guys probably we should talk, because that's a little much to do, right? But it's engagement that really, I think, helps present opportunities and identify you and your firm as someone who's a leader.
Got it. So the audience understood. The key here is to get involved and to participate in the ecosystem, right? Interesting. So definitely a key takeaway here. I wanted to go into the last section of our podcast, which is the challenges and priority of today and tomorrow. So we started talking about AI and technology and all of that stuff. There's a lot of buzzwords around that. We did have a very interesting presentation at your summer meeting at the Sagamore, where a lot of ethical point of views were said about AI. It is a big tool, but I want to know your key perspective on what's the next evolution, with or without tech, right?
Yeah, I don't know that anyone knows the answer to that. I mean, certainly much of it right now is being driven by AI and the things and understanding what can AI do, what can AI not do, what should AI be used for, what should it not be used for. And I can't remember the last time we had a meeting or an event where we didn't have a program on AI. People can't really seem to get enough of it. We've done it we have a contractor, longtime member on Long Island, and the next generation it's a family business. The next generation has taken over the company. So you've got two younger guys there that are running the company. They've embraced AI, right? As a lot of younger people have. And this was, I think, last year when we were at Lake Placid for the summer meeting. They talked about how they're using it in their business, which was interesting because these are peers, right? These are folks that the members know. They may bid against them. They know them. They serve in AGC together. There's now this growing market of AI experts, right? Every meeting I go to, somebody's talking about AI. Where'd they come from? I don't know. That wasn't a thing a few years ago, right? Now suddenly this is people's job to fly around and talk to people like me or our members about AI. So, I mean, I think it's still very much evolving. In a lot of ways, it's in its infancy, right? I mean, even just my own use of it, to see how it's changed in, I don't know, like the year or so that I've really been poking around at it and how much more capable it is now than it was then. But it's not going to replace people.
Absolutely
right? It's not going to, and it's certainly not going to replace the people that are out there doing the hard and important work of the construction industry. Will it change how everybody does their jobs? I think it will, to varying degrees, some more than others. Will it make us more efficient? I think it can. Are there pitfalls? Absolutely, there are pitfalls, and we're spending a lot of time. We just had a webinar on it last week, trying to educate people on that, because you need to be careful, right? You don't want to rush headlong into something like this and give it all your information and have an undesirable result. Technology in general is changing how we do everything, and that's the case in the construction industry. We talked about the crystal ball before. I don't have one.
Me neither, by the way.
If I did, I don't know, maybe we'd both be sitting on a beach somewhere if we did. But not that this is a bad place to be. This is great. I don't know. I just know that it's going to change, right? And we know that it's going to evolve, and how we do everything, including the business of construction, is going to be different in 5 years, 10 years, certainly 15 years. And I think it's our role, again, to make sure that people see what's coming, they understand it, they understand the good, the bad, the ugly, and then they are able to embrace it to the extent that they think it's appropriate for their business and their culture.
I think it's part of the role, right? You guys are bringing awareness to the industry, like being the eyes and ears and looking around the corner, like you said before, bringing awareness so people don't jump into stuff that they don't understand, right? What I really like to see by talking to some members at the summer conference is that people understand that now it's data, right? You need data. Obviously, I have my own opinion on where the data should come from, because if you're key punching data to create performance, to then be able to predict, well, that's a whole other subject. But this is not a podcast on AI. I really appreciated your point of view, Mike. My last question would be, what would be ultimately the legacy? I'm not talking about right now, but what would be the legacy that ideally you'd like to leave behind for your construction industry in New York State and all the great work you've been doing at AGC New York State?
Well, it's an interesting time to ask that question, Alex, because we're turning 100 next year. Next year is AGC New York State's centennial. And so it's an interesting time for me to be at the helm. It's an honor. It's really just good timing. I'd like to say it was a plan, but it's not. Like much of my life, it's being in the right place at the right time. It's worked out so far. But it's an opportunity to think about not only where we've been and what we've done and the impact that our members have had, literally building New York, building the communities across New York, building the skyline of New York City. Every major thing that has happened in New York over that century, every major event, the construction industry and AGC members have been a part of it, right? That's huge. And it's an amazing history. And where the state goes from here, our industry will be at the forefront of it because we will build it. Right now in central New York, I talked about the I-81 project, but there's something else big happening there, which is Micron is preparing to build, they're not quite started yet, a microchip fab plant that is going to transform the economy of central New York. It's happening here. It already happened here in the capital region, up in Saratoga County with Global Foundries and investments that started when Governor Pataki was the governor. He kind of started this process through things he did with the State University of New York here in Albany. At the time, people laughed at, and they said, they'll never build chip plants in New York. Well, are you guys crazy? Austin, Texas, and all these other places were competing for these facilities, and New York shows up, and they're like, yeah, okay, good luck. Here we are, right? New York is now becoming a leader in microchip construction. There are other industries like that are emerging that New York may be able to position itself as a leader. Certainly it's happening now with AI and the construction of data centers. That's a huge market for construction that a few years ago wasn't even a thing, right? Nobody was talking about it. So, you think about legacy, big part of your legacy is your history. But I think, at the end of the day, if I've done my job right, and however long I'm privileged to do this in our team, we will have made the construction industry smarter, safer, maybe more efficient. We're working on that. A lot of that is what the government makes us do. I remember a conversation I had with a major head of a major agency who said, we don't understand why all this stuff costs more than we thought it was going to cost. We want to have a meeting about that. I said, well, I can save you the time. How about the fact that you make our members do this? There's a cost involved with these things. So maybe we can make things more efficient too, and then get the next generation of people into the construction industry, from boots on the ground to the people running these companies that embrace that future forward-looking perspective that's going to make our industry build the economy of the next 100 years.
Mike, this is a great perspective. Thank you so much for sharing today. I mean, we talked about the mission of AGC. We also talked about the challenges of today and the challenges of tomorrow, as well as what is going to be the evolution of our construction industry here in New York. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. Really appreciate it. To all the audience, if you want to help us in our mission, Civalgo and AGC, to give back to members, please share this podcast with your networks. It's going to help us to get the message out. Again, really appreciate your time, Mike, and
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Looking forward to the future and the landscape here in New York.